welcome to episode number 6. As you see, Maeve is still sitting beside me. We decided we were going to kind of do a couple of these together. So welcome to Life Change Transformation number 6. Today we're going to be unpacking the first step in our opinion of being able to make that real change is awareness. You know, Maeve, of course, is originally from she's supposed to be an island, but she's in Canada these last few days here, so it's been pretty cool. She's here. She's a transformational life coach. She does this for a living to help people live their best lives. Myself, I'm a law enforcement officer, been 25 years of service. I'm retiring in 40 something shifts, 42 shifts, something like that. And I get to really lean into my new passion, which is helping people live better lives. That's why we decided to collaborate together. I'm an author. I wrote a book called A Call for Service and launched the Frontline Resiliency Project with the idea to help all frontline members and their families, just kind of, anybody that supports them to live better lives. So here we are, number 6, awareness. When I think about awareness piece, the awareness, okay, I look back at myself in 2008 or so, 8 or 9, and I look at where I was then, and I'm going to tell you a story about my wife and I. So Colette and I, she's an amazing woman, by the way. She stuck by me through all of the stuff that I had to deal with, through all the stress and all the occupational stress injury that I had suffered as a result of some of the trauma I had seen on the job and some of the events I was involved in. And I was at a point in our marriage, in our life, when we were going to break down. Ultimately, I was at that tipping point where either I just went one way, and which is the way I was going, which is to disaster and destruction, or choose a different path. Now, I chose a different path because I wanted to be there for my family, because I obviously wasn't showing up for them, because we'd had lots of conversations around the fact that I was never present. And it wasn't until I was made aware of what I was doing that I realized how poorly I was showing up for her in that moment. And it really stemmed from the fact that I was showing her love. Like, I love the 5 Love Language book is basically what saved our marriage in that moment. So that was the big thing I did, that very first thing I did to really see how I was showing up. And without that awareness, I would have continued to do things terribly. And so, for example, I bought her tulips. So right before we had this big blow up, right before I read this book, I was coming home from a shift one night, and I stopped at the grocery store to get some of the milk and the bread and whatever else for the house. And I bought her tulips as a gift, as a thank you for, I was trying to do better. And that was what I had thought of. I thought a gift would do that, or be that thing that would give her that joy and see that I do love her. I show up, I give her the flowers, she opens the flowers, and her face starts to change. And when she gets them all unwrapped, she looks at me and she says, "I effing hate tulips." I'm like, well, that didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. And it's not about the tulips. It was about the fact that she had expressed to me her dislike for tulips, and I just didn't even hear it. So when I read the book, I realized she is an acts of service person, at least at that time. She needed me to show up, take out the garbage, do the dishes, be there for our son, take the load off of her shoulders. Like, she was burdening all of this, and I wasn't helping her in that way at all. But it wasn't until I was aware of it,
yes,
could I change it. So that's why I think awareness is such a key first step in making that change, because if you're not aware, do you agree?
yeah, absolutely. It's the starting point of being able to make choices about whether you're going to do things the same or different. And so much of the time we're on default. I mean, that's just the kind of human side of our nature. Like, there's so much going on, and our brains, once we do things one way, the brain kind of says, okay, well, that works. So it might have made a decision that, tulips worked when you were a little boy, bringing home a bunch of tulips to your mom someday. And that was, tulips work. So, and then we just keep repeating the stuff that we think works. And until we come into awareness and come off the default and the hamster wheel of just doing what we do, then we have choices. Then we
Mhm.
have choices.
We were talking just before this, in addition to the awareness piece and just being aware of it, what do you think is key?
Well, I was saying this, that I think awareness and insight, a lot of people, go to therapy to understand, why am I the way I am? What has led me to this phase or stage I find myself in? And I think that, understanding our journey and understanding who we are and understanding the choices that we've made is really very important. But most people don't want to just understand. They want to understand it in service of changing. And in my opinion, a lot of people get stuck in the understanding phase and almost become, well, I am who I am because of what's happened in the past. And therefore now I'm just stuck with this. Whereas I really believe that the awareness is just the starting point in terms of, okay, so this got me to here. And now, I mean, for you, Gary, what I'm hearing is that you had an insight, a new awareness between you and Colette. She did not want flowers, and she wanted you to read this book and understand her a bit better and do things a bit differently. So the awareness in that moment for you was not the end of the journey. It was really the start of the journey. And that to me is what's so important about awareness, that it's not the end of the road to be able to understand who I am and how I got to here, but it's to be able to take all of that. And do I want to stay, with this being my story and my passion? I really believe the phrase I use sometimes with my own clients is that we all have a history, we all have a story, we all have a past, but we're not defined by that. And you and I, we, whatever it is that we want, we can create that going forward. And nothing that has happened up until now needs to dictate any of that unless we choose to let it.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing you saying is that I had a moment of insight and awareness, and I worked with it.
Mhm. It's true. Like it it was just the beginning for me. Like really,
Mm,
and I really like the awareness piece of it. And we're not. And I think that understanding where you've come from is an important piece of it. Like understanding what you've been through. Like I look back at my journey and I look at all the events I've been through and some of the emotions I carried with it and how it made me feel. It was really important for me to unpack what that feeling was, and it was okay to feel those things. And I should have probably expressed them a little bit better, and I should have probably unloaded that way
yeah,
before I did.
yeah.
And that's the whole resilience. We talked about resilience there a little while, a few podcast episodes ago. But ultimately, that resiliency, when you bounce back from that crisis or that moment. So for us and me and Colette in that moment, it was like DEFCON for us. We were in trouble, big trouble. The bounce back for me was then to lean into, okay, acts of service. She likes me to do these things, and I need to do these things. Right. So then I had to take those steps. So I wasn't perfect at it, and I fell down a ton at the beginning because I was repatterning old
Yeah.
behaviors. Right. And so I really had to work really, really hard about with the stepping in and making sure I do the garbages and make sure I do the dishes and be more mindful about being available to just be a co-parent in that moment because I just wasn't doing that prior. And so I didn't do it perfectly. It was not perfect at all. And she'll tell you it wasn't perfect, but it was better.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was better.
It was better. And that's enough.
And that's enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you keep getting better each time, then, or
Yeah.
over periods of time, better gets better.
Right. And
Yeah.
that was it, right? As I created momentum, right? As anybody creates momentum in their lives, you do build that resiliency muscle. You do build the awareness muscle,
Hmm.
right? And because once you get aware of a situation, doesn't mean it's the only situation potentially,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And as I got really curious about this. That's part of the reason why I'm in the work. That's part of the reason what brought us together
Yeah.
was the original curiosity around, well, what does this really mean? How does this really work? How does this mindset really like change where I'm going in life? And if it wasn't for that very first moment, or I would never have got down the road because I wouldn't have had the ability to to navigate because now I see things and I have things come to me now, even as recent as last weekend, that I would never have even recognized or wouldn't able to recognize 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just it's always an evolving thing. And I always believe too that if you're going to grow through a problem, or if you're going to come through any kind of crisis and you're going to build that resiliency piece, well, it's about what are you doing on the way through that? Because it's not, because when you come out the other side, you're going to be different. It doesn't matter who you are. You're not going to be the same person. We can't live in the past. I will never be Gary Benoit of 1999 when I joined policing. I will never be that dude ever again.
No, every day.
Right? Because I've grown to be a different person. But that's because I'm now aware of that. But I wasn't aware of that before. I would have tried to get back to my old person.
Yeah.
Originally, that was what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
I was trying to get back to who I was. Well, that's ridiculous. I'll never be able to do that. It's not possible.
Yeah, there's a few things coming up in me, I suppose, and I think the awareness piece is that, you know, what you described was just kind of a moment of just, you know, it was so blindingly new and gave you something new to work with. I think oftentimes what we don't realize is that we can come into awareness in any moment in any day, that we are constantly be giving signals from life in terms of what's for us and what's not for us. And that shows up, we talk about it in our work, as two signals for growth. Does it feel expansive or does it feel contractive? And expansive is anything that's kind of, we'd probably as a shorthand associate with positive, and we feel good, we feel alive, we feel on track in some way, and contractive is anything that feels, you know, towards what we might call negative emotions, you know, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the discontent. And every single time we notice one of those things, oh, this causes me to feel expansive, I want to do more of this, or oh, this doesn't cause expansion, you know, this feels contractive, I feel depleted, or I feel, you know, there's a weight on my shoulders. In some respects, in that moment, that was a shit moment. Like, this does not feel good.
No.
And this was not the result I wanted. And I don't want this anymore. So something's got to give here. So I think that awareness, and we talk about the breath, you know, that one conscious breath is enough that can bring us into awareness in any minute. So for most people, we're on that kind of, not even for most people, for all people, a lot of the time, we're on this kind of treadmill of doing what I used to always do, being the person I always used to be. And as we grow and mature in life, some of that we want to bring with us, and some of it we don't. So those moments of awareness are, you know, every time we notice, is this working? Is this not? Am I feeling good? Am I not? All of it is information. And when we're conscious about it, when we're in awareness with it, we have choices about what to do with it. And I think sometimes, you know, when you describe life from some of those incidents you'd had through your work, that, you know, you're kind of in survival mode, and you're just doing what you're doing, and you're not in awareness, because sometimes maybe awareness brings you to a place of pain, and you don't want to feel that or go there.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about, well, I once again, I look back, I can only personalize a little bit, is you're right, I had to be, when I realized what I was doing, it didn't feel very good. It wasn't because I wasn't doing it to be hurtful of anybody, of Colette or the family. That wasn't what my intention was. But what it did was it motivated me.
Yes.
Right. It motivated me. And like, it's no different than when, if you're listening and you're like, I want you to personalize this for yourself, right? Like, I want you to think about it in your way, in your situation. Is that where is it that you've been on autopilot, or where is it that you're maybe not fulfilling 100% or of whatever you those duties or that idea. Because for me, it was my duty as a husband, right? The idea to be there for her, and I wasn't doing any of that. I was zero. I was a 0% on that one, right? I got nothing. I failed, but I didn't fail for long after I realized it, right? And I didn't. Once again, I improved by small increments. Well, where can you just have that awareness? Like, and how do you create awareness? What do you think? What is the best way to create awareness in your life?
I suppose I would just say to just pause and notice, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And do those things serve me in terms of who I want to be in the world and where I want to, what, the results I want to have? And we talk about vision a lot in our work, Gary, and it, as a, whether it's as a parent, as a spouse, as a partner, as a colleague, as a child, as an employee, as a leader, am I showing up? Am I being that person? And that just requires us, I think, to be reflective.
Mhm.
And we don't always know fully ourselves, so sometimes it's maybe asking for feedback as well. And again, with discretion and inviting feedback from people whose opinion you care about. I don't think it's wise necessarily to ask for feedback from everybody and anybody,
No.
but definitely from the people, that you care about. And again, it can be quite simple, what am I doing well and what do you think I could do better? It doesn't have to be really complicated. We can complicate this stuff a
Mhm.
lot.
Can. Yeah.
Um,
Uh, I just want to add. I want to add on to that is that
Please.
um, if you want to be more aware, I think we all know, we all have those pains. That just, I want to go back to longings and discontents. We all have those things. Things we say like, "Oh man, I really wish we could do that," or "I really wish I had."
Mhm.
I really wish my relationship was a little bit better, or I really wish whatever comes after those kinds of words, like that type of statement where you're like, "Oh, that would be really awesome if."
Mm.
Well, that right there is the first thing you need to be aware of. If you start saying those words in your world, and you're like, "I really wish I had a stronger marriage," or "I really wish I had a better relationship with my kids," or "I really wish I had more money in the bank,"
Yeah.
right? Whatever that is, that's what you have to sort of listen for in your own head. Or I really don't want to do this today.
Mm.
Oh man, I really have to go to that job I hate. Well, sometimes that job is necessary. But a mentor of mine said that there's like there's a stat out of the States, and I think it's 48%. No, wait, pardon me. No, it's not. It's 68% of all American people are getting up to go to a job that they hate and coming home to a spouse they can't stand.
I know you've said that before. I think that's so depressing.
Isn't it? It's horrible.
Yeah.
But that's a stat out of the States. And the reason is because they've lost that communication, right? Because things are happening, life happens, and sometimes we get lost
Busyness.
in the what I call white water of that. If you're going on a river and you went off, down a kayak and you got caught in an eddy and it's white water and you're going around in a tumble, that's kind of what people's lives can be like sometimes.
Mhm.
But if you say those statements, if you're making those particular things, you can be aware of that now. And what would you, and then ask your question in that moment, what would I love here?
Yeah.
How do you replace that? Well, how do you make that different? Well, ask the question, what would I really love here instead? And I think that awareness then opens up an idea,
Yeah.
right? And that's where your dream or vision is born from. And maybe you don't know specifically what that dream or vision is. It's not maybe not crystal, but you'll know exactly what you don't want, right? You'll know exactly what you don't want in life. And so I think that that's really, really important to be able to listen to yourself talk. And that's that piece of awareness.
Yeah. So two things on that. One, I mean, I think knowing what you don't want is great because so it's kind of like, well, what's the flip side of that?
Mhm.
And that's going to start to point you towards what you do want. And the other thing from what you were saying there, I was remembering like how important it is to just listen to your own language and the words you're using. Because again, you know, they say the words are a window on the soul, and they're a window on our thinking. So, you know, if I'm like, man, I hate this job, or, you know, I hate this commute, or, you know, I wish, whether it's the money in the bank, or, you know, meeting the love of our lives, or whatever it is, that's again, if we're paying attention to our own language and what we're saying. And I often think, actually, I say to my own clients a lot, it's the throwaway comments that we make,
Yes.
you know, that, you know, but money doesn't grow on trees, or whatever it is. Those give us, again, the great insights, give us awareness into what our thinking is. And 9 times out of 10, that thinking is inherited thinking. We've
Yes.
picked that up from a parent, or somebody, you know, often quite young in life, somebody who was, you know, a significant person
Yeah,
in our
influential.
community, or in our family, in our school.
Mhm.
And as adults now, we want to start thinking, well, you know, do I want to believe that?
Right.
You know, as kids, we didn't know. And again, you know, compassion for the people around us, they thought they were telling us
Yeah.
what we needed to know.
Exactly.
But as adults now, we can say, well, do I still want to believe that? And if I don't, again, once I have that awareness, that I think it, now I can get curious. Well, do I want to believe it? And if I don't, well, what would I rather believe? What would I choose to
Right.
believe? So yeah, like, it is really the starting point. And, you know, you were saying, I was trying to get back to who I was, and we were saying, on one level, we can't do that. On another level, I mean, there's a great phrase, again, I think it comes from the States, but that, you know, some people live 90 years and some people live the same year 90 times.
Yes.
So I think that the latter, you know, living the same year 90 times, comes from when we're not in awareness, when we're just doing what we're doing, thinking what, you know, the inherited thoughts. We never question them. We never, you know, consider changing them. We don't, you know, we tolerate. Again, I use this word a lot. I don't think any of us were born to tolerate
No.
things that we don't like. And yet, you know, many of us, the message that we get is just, you know, put up and shut up,
Right.
and, you know, be grateful for what you have,
100%.
and don't be greedy, and don't ask for too much. But, you know, if you're listening to Gary and I here, you know, that is not where we're coming from. And what we're telling you is that you can absolutely have more, be more, do more, get more, create more, give more, like, and that's really what we're here for.
Correct.
You know, it's never about toleration and putting up. So awareness, even if that's the awareness today, is that there's a possibility for that for you, then our job is done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what, the phrase that comes to my mind is another way to put it, that tolerance, or living life by default.
Yeah.
Do you want to live life by default? Well, we get up and go through motions a lot.
Yeah, we do.
I think we tend to just settle.
Yeah.
We tend to settle. And I don't know where that comes from. People wear that settling piece as like a badge of honor in a way.
Mm.
And I just sometimes think that we can do so much better than that. I know we can. Actually, not.
Yeah.
I know that we can do better. And so really it's about, if you're settling, you know, living your life by design or default, right? If you want to design your life, you can do that.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing it for years. You can do it too, because you have that ability inside of you to just do something a little bit different. You were talking about tolerance. I had a thought, and I think I forgot.
It slipped away. Yeah.
It was there for a moment. It was fleeting. It'll come back to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so the designer default, I mean, sometimes, you know, I don't know who said it, but, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think oftentimes we're a little bit afraid of the responsibility. If I really choose to live by design, that, you know, then I can be called out on that, you know, and that fear of, you know, what if I don't make it, or what if I fail, or what if I get it wrong, or what would people say, or what if I make a fool of myself, you know, all the usual stuff. so sometimes it's just easier to not try.
Mhm.
Well, in the short term, I
Mhm.
think it's easier to not try and to not be embarrassed or to not be hurt or to not fall. But in the longer term, the frustration, I think when we are tolerating, it's kind of yeah, I mean, the ideas are coming as I'm speaking that, we're either going forward or backwards. There is no steady state. When we look in the natural world, it's either growth or decay, and we're part of the natural world. We're organisms,
Mhm.
so we can only be growing or decaying. We can't just be in this kind of steady state space. So I mean, I know, and I put up for a long time. I was in a job I was unhappy with for, anything between 7 and 10 years, I would say. And I wore that as a badge of honor
Mhm.
for a lot of the time that I was making the most of it and try and well, for a while I thought it was a badge of honor thing. For a while it was kind of a survival thing to
Mhm.
just try and make the best of it. But in the end, it wasn't serving me or the people I was working with to be in that kind of, I just got to make this work. And the people who came after me brought a very different energy and created all sorts of other kinds of
Yeah.
results. And I created different energy and different kinds of results in my life when I decided
Yeah.
enough of this.
Yeah.
So I think like the awareness piece can feel a little bit scary
For sure.
when we first allow ourselves to become conscious of the discontent and to realize that we're not showing up in ways that we're proud of, and that we have ambitions for things to be different, but we have no idea how
Yeah.
we're going to create them or whether it'll work out or not. We just know we want it to.
Yeah.
And that can feel really scary. And yet I think it's the only way to go,
Mhm.
because we know, like, people on their deathbed, the biggest regret is the things they didn't do.
Mhm.
Nobody ever says, I'm sorry I tried.
You're right. Yeah.
It's
You're right.
always kind of, I'm sorry I didn't keep in touch with those friends. I didn't ask that person out on a
Yes.
date. I didn't take a chance on that
Didn't do that.
business, or I didn't risk things to go to that new place of work or move house or move country or whatever it is. So I just, again, I find myself saying this a lot, actually, that we don't want to focus on the negative, but we really do want to harness the possibility of the regret, or of the, if I get to my deathbed and I'm looking back at this moment and I'm just like kicking myself that I didn't take a chance, or didn't try, at least try for my marriage, or
Right.
try for, making that career
Yeah.
change, or try for, whatever it is that you're longing for as you're listening to us today. Just if the fear of it is really big, sometimes it is a good idea to just think, well, how much am I going to regret it if I don't do
Mm.
it, and just use that regret to catapult you and to really push you into
Something new.
doing it, because
Yeah.
as soon as you take that step, you're on a roll.
Yeah.
And the thought of it is always way worse than
Yeah.
the reality of it.
Very true.
Yeah,
My thought came back to me.
good job.
We're a spiritual being, right? Having a human experience,
Yes.
right? If we succumb or listen to all the longings, discontents, or we lean into those longings, discontents that we're experiencing or that we're stating or that we're feeling, and we start to change that, the potential is endless,
Yeah.
right? And you know, when you speak about always, I come from the end in mind. So when you're at the very last breath you take, there's a couple of lines in a country song that talks about, it's a Tim McGraw song. He talks about headlights in his procession. So he's talking about how many people are going to show up and line his procession as he goes, you know, goes away. And then no one likes to talk about death. No one likes death, but death happens.
Hmm.
What happens then? What are you going to say to yourself in that very last moments in life? Are you going to look back at life and celebrate everything you've done and be super proud of all the things you tried? Because really, it's not about the failure that you would have had, because everybody has moments in time where we don't quite get to that mark. We don't
Hmm.
quite, we have a failure, but you're going to celebrate all the times you dusted yourself off.
Yeah.
right? And you got back up and you went again. And being aware will allow you to take different actions and take different steps. And then as you grow, because we're all going to grow, we all grow every day. And if you have a longing or a discontent, that means life is seeking a greater expression through you. And you're doing yourself a disservice by not leaning in to that particular life force that's breathing you. And so it's really, really key, I think, to just understand awareness. If you can be aware of these things, if you can just turn your awareness meter up a little bit, just a couple of percent, 1% even, if it's 1% better than it was yesterday, how much better are you going to be tomorrow? Right?
Well, at least 1%.
At least 1%. Right. And we're not, like I say, I didn't do this perfectly. I can tell you that right now. It wasn't perfect in my life. And we're not looking for perfection. We've said it before. This is about just making progress, you guys. This is about you guys just leaning in and just doing something a little bit different, having that progress. So,
Yeah. And I mean, there's no end point where we can say,
no.
we've got it, we've got it sussed now, we've got it made now. I mean,
Right.
because like you said, like that call to expansion, it's there all day, every day. So no matter how much you achieve, and for both of us, we've achieved things that we're delighted with and proud of, and we're not who we used to be. But again, another song, what does it say? Something like, I ain't what I used to be. I'm not what I'm going to be, but I'm getting better every day. So we're on our way, So the longings, no matter how far you've come, and I've come, people listening, no matter how far you've come, you we want to celebrate all of that, and in awareness there are new longings and discontents, and there'll be frustrations with some of our current conditions and situations, and there'll be new desires, having achieved a certain level of business success or relationship success or financial success, whatever it is. We know there's more, isn't there?
There's more.
We've spent a whole weekend leaning into vision, and
you just did this a whole bunch.
Yes,
we're in a spiral universe,
upwards,
right?
yes.
So like every time you go up a different spiral, it's a new level of awareness, and so yeah, it's amazing. Like I say, even as recently as the weekend, new ideas and new moments of awareness showed up for me. Yes. Because I believe that you have to come in with a beginner's mindset. Just be curious. Just be curious.
Yeah. Are we doing on time?
Oh, we're pretty good. I think we're good for time.
Okay, I'm going to add something on the awareness piece, because again, something I say with my clients is that every expansion in terms of the success that we have on the outside comes on foot of an expansion of our awareness or our consciousness on the inside. So this awareness piece, it's not always just awareness around my longings and discontents or an insight into how I'm behaving or how that's impacting, but it's also our awareness and our consciousness in terms of, you use the phrase, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So if I really believe that, if each of you listening, if you really believe that, what does that mean in terms of what's possible for us, in terms of the perspectives that we can take on the situations that we're dealing with, on the sacred friends that show up in our lives, the people that, we maybe experience as frustrating or challenging or whatever. But when I'm working with my awareness and my consciousness, and as I'm expanding my awareness, that's when I have the opportunity for an expansion in my results. So again, I suppose it just speaks to that piece about how critical awareness is, but it's bigger than just our awareness of what we're thinking and feeling, and maybe our awareness of who we really are as well, in terms of being spiritual beings having a human experience.
We're coming to the end here. What's your final thoughts? What's, if you could give one or two real big tidbits for those that were looking for the next step or the ability to create a different awareness inside of them, what would you give them today?
I would suggest that as you become conscious or aware of some of the thoughts that you are thinking, the language that you're using, to just get really curious about it and ask yourself, do I believe that? And is it serving me to believe it in the context of who I want to be or the results I want to create?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to leave you with this. Ask yourself, what would you really love in life? I think that's a great question to ask yourself. Two, you're going to do things imperfectly. It's okay. It's not about perfection. We're just about being a little bit better. And three, know that you're going to grow just by expanding your awareness by like 1%. So if you just open your awareness a little bit more than you were yesterday, and a little bit more than tomorrow than the day before, then you will soon see exponential growth and opportunity show up in your life where you never thought possible before. So yeah, just take those things and try to, sit down and feel what you feel and just kind of journal on that. And of course, there's always the gratitude piece, but just be grateful for the awareness that you're experiencing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Gratitude
Yeah.
for the awareness.
Thanks for coming or joining us on our 6th episode here of Life Change Transformation. As always, please connect with us via our social media or through the podcast. We would love to answer your questions, interact with you. Please, it's all about you guys, really. We're trying to pour into you as much as we can throughout these episodes, and we're trying to be as present for you guys in the moment. And we love you all for joining. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Any final thoughts before we sign off today?
No, just I think last time I said, you do you, be the best version of you you can be, and take any of these ideas that we've shared here today and just see where it can take you.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.